Traveling alone in a foreign country, I knew that I was setting myself up for some level of discomfort, but I had not anticipated it would be as great as it was. In 2017, I visited Poland over Thanksgiving. I came into the experience having already traveled among other European countries, and so I had always been met with a comfort in the fact that English was represented at every place that I'd been to. The food and culture had been Americanized enough that I was okay with it. And so, however, Poland was not as accommodating to my naive American comforts. The language barrier was significant, and I immediately found myself struggling to even leave the airport. I asked people for help, but not many people would speak English to me, and when I finally asked one of the information desks, I couldn't even understand their accent, so I just pretended to understand just to be polite. But then really I left even more confused, so I just gave up. I cried my eyes out, walking back and forth through the hallways, trying to figure out how to get down to the subway station. I remember thinking, seriously, like it cannot be this hard. But somehow it was. I didn't realize how paralyzed I was without English. Eventually I gave up and I spent a lot of money to buy Wi-Fi on my phone so that I could contact an Uber, because at that point I was just too embarrassed to even talk to the cab people. Poland continued to be uncomfortable for me, and although I was white, which seemed to be the most represented race in the parts of Poland that I got to visit, I definitely stood out, and I was definitely a minority because of my language, because of my clothes, the way I was in general, because of my religion. People knew that I was American, and they stared at me a lot. I didn't know what it was like to be stared at or to even stand out before. And I can remember meeting other Americans who I quickly took solace in, and we decided to stick together because they were also experiencing this discomfort while they were there as well. One day was Thanksgiving, and that was especially hard because my family had always had huge Thanksgiving meals. It was a time of the year when I would get to see extended family for the first time that year, and so the celebration would be a big deal, and I was really missing some good Southern cooking at that point, really bad. So the other Americans and I decided to go out to eat to try to celebrate with lots of Polish food, even though no one else there would know that the day was special to us. However, we were once again met with the language barrier, and I ended up not getting to stuff myself full on that Thanksgiving like I was used to, because I was scared of what I was even ordering. And I definitely couldn't read the menu, and it was hard. So, although uncomfortable and blatantly obvious that I didn't necessarily fit in, today I'm thankful for the experience that I had, because it really allowed me to grow, to expand my narrow perspectives, to look beyond my own privilege that I had always been so comfortable with my environments. It prompted me to think about how being the other can be truly horrifying, and it allowed me to think deeper about the ways that I had never experienced that before. And so it's important to know what it's like to feel uncomfortable, because so many students, so many families experience these discomforts from being disconnected from a dominant culture daily in America, and this is now their reality. It's not just a trip, it's not something they know they can get out of. And I think about how hard it was for me to move beyond embarrassment and beyond confusion and just try to remember that I was still valid in that space too, even though I was a minority, and even though I was being stared at, and even though I was being judged, and no one knew why or even cared that I wanted to eat a lot of turkey on a random Thursday in November. And so now my thoughts and feelings around my experience of discomfort really encouraged me to make sure that I'm interacting with my future students in a way that makes sure that they're never feeling this level of discomfort. That means providing visuals for them, having peer buddies that help them feel less isolated, less disconnected, being cognizant to check in on them constantly and make sure that they're okay and that they don't feel embarrassed to ask for help, and that even if they're confused, that it's not seen as a deficit and that their language is not seen as a deficit. And I want to make sure that I'm giving the most support possible, because no child should ever have to feel a level of discomfort in the classroom. Thank you.